and welcome back to Explore the Spectrum. I'm your host, Janetta Bryant, and today we have a parent and advocate with us, Renee. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Really excited to have you share a little bit of your story. I think that you and your son and everything that y'all are accomplishing is a success story that so many of our different viewers are going to relate to and be inspired by. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what got you started on this journey and what y'all are doing now.
Okay, so going back, Chris is currently, my son is 24 years old. When he was born, nothing seemed, at first out of the ordinary, but then his first year of life was challenging. He had seizures. And from there, we noticed, as time went on, like some of the milestones that you would expect to see in at that time, infants and then toddlers, he struggled at first. So I'm really thankful, though, to early intervention programs that helped him to be able to, like through speech and occupational therapy, to lay a foundation for him. And it's taken, I'd say it takes time. It has been a journey. It has been a process. And I tell parents that it's definitely, love, that perseverance. But the biggest piece is love and perseverance. So that's where Chris's journey began his first year. He was definitely involved in speech, in language intervention, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Eventually, he learned to, he was able to walk, eventually learning to, make sounds and then make connections. And I also, obviously, I'm going to say reading to him. He loved music and songs. And what also helped was, I say, good quality children's programming. Chris loved certain TV shows that were very near and dear to his heart that he made a connection to. And at the very beginning, when he was starting to make connections with communication, we didn't quite understand what he was saying, but there were sounds he was, trying to communicate. It was obvious by his actions. Come to find out that he was starting to script the TV shows that he had been watching, and thus opened for him a door of communication and starting to make connections. And also, we consistently using baby signs with him. And so that laid the beginning foundation of the early years. And then he entered into an early intervention pre-K program that helped him to work on some of the behaviors and frustrations that he had as a child. And so that kind of that's where our journey began. And from there, consistency with school. He has been in interventions pretty much throughout his entire school experience. But one thing I noticed about Chris, and I'll bring you to the here and now. So if any time you need to stop me, just stop me. Tell me if you need another question. But Chris has always loved storytelling from when he was very young. In his mind, he would see characters. He would, in our house, set up like different kinds of displays and settings, and he would play. And he was, he was seeing it in his head and bringing it to life. And from that, I recognized that he had a very strong ability for himself to amuse himself and to tell stories. And part of it too, I think it's because he didn't have the friendship and those connections with other, children. So he did spend, quite a lot of time alone, and often very much preferred being in his room or being alone. But I noticed this strength for storytelling, which is kind of where it kind of grew and bringing him to, his current day. Where Chris had always talked about he's loved books, and he had always said if he could ever become an author, and specifically with a children's author, was something that he would aspire to become. So that's kind of where the journey began. When he was a senior in high school, he was asked, what would you like to accomplish after high school? And he said he wanted to become a children's author. And so from there, with the love of, and he did that. So with the love, I'm not sure how fast forward you want me to go, but with his high school art teacher, which was a beautiful story, he and Chris that year sat down and wrote, what Chris was seeing in his head, that he was able to write down. Because one day I actually had said to Chris when he was in pretend play mode, I'm like, that's really good. Can you write that down, what you see in your head, what's happening? And his characters came to life on paper. So from pretend playing with the plush animals, as he calls them, because it gives an interactive experience when you are reading or telling a story, having a plush representation. So from there, he actually did write it down. And I thought, wow, it's pretty, I was like, wow, that's the imagination. So his high school art teacher nurtured it and mentored Chris for that year of his high school year. And Chris is good at having like the characters in his head and writing the stories, but he couldn't draw movement. So his high school art teacher with Chris collaborated, and he became like that driving force to make those characters come to life on the page. And so then the beautiful story is the day that Chris graduated high school, his art teacher retired. They both had left at the same time.
Oh, and that is a pretty story. But he didn't just do one book. He didn't just do one thing in high school. He went on to publish several books. He's now got 4 books, correct?
You are very apt. That's terrific.
No, he's a shining light for our community. He's dreamt it, and I always say to people, dream it, then do it. He dreamt it. You dreamt with him, and now he is doing it. Yep. So 4 books is quite an accomplishment. But the fact that he's an inspiration to our community is quite the accomplishment too, because it's fun to watch his story unfold. Tell us a little bit about how we can reach out to you guys and support you further.
Okay, so currently, yes, Chris he has a new illustrator that he is working with, and I think it has done a beautiful job also capturing the characters that Chris sees in his head. His 3rd and 4th books have just recently been published and made available. Here's where I'll say, when he originally wrote the book, it took us a couple of years before it became published, the first book, which was called Dottie's Freckles. And when he researched about becoming a children's author, we found out that through publishing, it's very expensive to get a book published. So at that time, his book was fantastic, but we recognized that we were not able to financially at that time support it. So it wasn't until a couple of years later that somebody had mentioned to us, possibility of self-publishing. So that's where we have now, the journey has taken us going through self-publishing, but it really is Chris's dream and ours for him. Is to continue on this path. It's definitely, as you're saying, like an inspiration to the community. The community has been an inspiration to us as well. The embracing and the number of people that are just like, happy and championing for him has also helped him to continue on the journey and having that self-worth and that value piece. So he is hoping that somebody will want to publish his books, and so we wouldn't have to go through self-publishing and continue being able to write more stories. He does have, so the Dottie series has now, he has the 3rd book in that series, which was published, and then he began a new genre of Oakley Sanctuary Friends. So the 3rd book in the Dottie series is now available, and then that's a big thing. Chris also, because he loves animals, he's wanted to travel. And he would like to visit additional zoos in the country so that he can do more research for the animals. I have to say, he puts in a lot of research in the books that he creates. Okay,
so if somebody wants to purchase one of these books, since it's self-published, how do they find you so that they can support this? Where do they go?
Okay. So we're Chris in the Able Universe is the name of Chris, where he's trying to create a world where we all feel able and believing, achieving, leading, and exceptional. His books are available on Amazon. You can reach out through us through chrisintheableuniverse.org. He can be found on multiple social media sites with, Facebook. He's most active on Instagram, but we also have, like Twitter. But he does a lot of interaction. He posts a lot. If you want to get to know more about Chris too, if you look into his website, there are links that will take you on his journey. And it will also give you some information if you're looking for him. And he has like a series that he calls Out and About. So that gives you an idea of where he's going to be next.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We have really enjoyed hearing a little bit about your story and Chris's story, and we encourage you to continue to write and distribute because it's fun to share. It's fun to share how somebody's overcome the odds.
Can I say one last thing, please?
Sure.
To anyone, the one piece that I tell parents, and I don't, but Chris, it's love. It's support and it's championing for our children and knowing that they have gifts and talents and really helping them to succeed their dreams no matter what challenges that they feel and experience, I should say. So that's like the biggest piece I tell parents, it's love. And so he is going to continue to write. And I thank you for always, you're a beautiful person and opening up opportunities and giving us an opportunity like this to share his message. chrisintheableuniverse.org.
Beautifully said. Thank you again, Renee. Appreciate you being on and telling a little bit about his story. And thank you to everyone watching as we continue to explore the possibilities.